whenever a new game gets introduced. My approach here would be to buy in short and focus on much more the high cards, like 5 high cards. 3-bet from the small blind. 60 big blind steep or effective. Obviously, K Jr. is never going to fold. Very static board, probably small c-bet. So in 4-card PLO, I mean, we're just going to fire here 1/3 with full range. If we have some really bad reverse blockers, I can also imagine how we are just not, or how we are going to profit more by just checking. Because reverse removal is can be more extreme or significant in 5-card, and also removal effects. It's just straightforward removal effects can also be more significant and meaningful in 5-card PLO. So in 5-card PLO, you can just block more of your opponent's continuing range, which means you need a higher qualitative blocker to bluff. Looks like the money might go in here, check raise from the big blind. And what I mean by that is when you are considering c-betting the flop, you need probably a lot of good reasons if you don't have a hand that wants to stack off at shallow stack sizes. You need really good blockers to your opponent's continuing range. In 4-card PLO, that often also equals equity anyway, because you have such a high likelihood to not have the blocker, like the flush blocker, but you actually have the flush draw, that I would think it kind of like comes down to playing more for value, so to speak, and understand the value of your hand. More so than being focused all around blockers, because you just don't have as many. A lot of the times these blocker hands have also a ton of equity. It's basically what I'm saying, because you have 5 cards that can support your blocker, or 4 cards that can support your single blocker. So here, Lucky was c-betting the flop, got check called. It's a very, like this turn is much more meaningful in 5-card after check call on the flop, because Vayne VD can have a lot more aces or ace king, big draws at this point than in 4-card. Raise call at a little bit more than 40 big blinds effective for pot size. Big blind calls as well. And if you think about the SPR, which is around 4, even less, it's so important to donk because of the reverse removal effect. If you do have, you know, Queen 8 and some weak hearts, it's so likely your opponents are going to check, and you're not going to have a successful check raise. So you'd rather just bet yourself, because you do need more protection against 10 cards or 2 opponents. In this instance, though, goes check around on the flop. Check around on the turn. Probably holding a queen is just a more significant blocker here for the big blind on the turn, like considering bluffing that card. I just don't see a lot of slow playing, basically. I don't think it's a good idea to be slow playing a ton on dynamic boards in multi-way pots. You're just going to get enough action by betting, and also protection is more important. Bottom left, we see a min raise on the button by Ronnie and a 3-bet from the small blind. We are around 80 big blinds deep. Very small c-bet and fold. Interesting that he only bets that small on ace king 6. And we see here a smaller open raise sizing choice by mids. Pretty interesting. I think if you guys are tackling 5-card PLO short, even deeper stacked, I would stick for the most part to tighter ranges pre-flop and just pot size open, because I can imagine a lot of players will call too wide. Pre-flop, and you want to punish that. It's sort of similar like in the early stages of PLO. People have a false impression of what actually a playable hand looks like, and they're going to be VPIP too often, like we saw before in the small blind with, I think, Queen, Jack, Jack, 8-3 double suited. That seemed to be a wide cold call for a pot size raise or 3x raise. I'm going to move forward here a little bit and see if we can find another hand that goes to showdown. Shouldn't take too long. Just trying to catch an interesting situation across these 5 tables. And again, guys, if you are playing already 5-card PLO, or even when not, and you're considering getting into it, let me know if this kind of format is bringing you some value to get the first insights into the game. Still looking for a showdown here. All right, so here we go. See a button open raise and a 3-bet. We are a little bit lower than, or we are like 70 big blinds deep. King 7-5, very dynamic board. It doesn't really feel like a game where you are going to bet a ton of like half pot and have like a very reasonable bet folding range like in PLO 4 cards. Well, in 4-card PLO you don't have as many bet fold hands here, but you have some that are blocking like the raising ranges of our opponent, and then you have some hands that want to induce that are on the stronger end. Here it just seems like at this SPR out of position on a dynamic board, you just want the protection and just pot or check, and that would mean for me that I would be potting the value hands, of course, and then also checking some of the very strong hands. Not too many. I don't think we induce that much, but we obviously want to protect the checking range. So Veni Vidi is checking the flop, maybe also checking a couple of hands like top set that have no backup, which makes it more likely our opponent has a hand that wants to stab. So we can avoid the bad turn cards and we can just check raise all in. So pot size bet, we already know the money goes in, so Veni was actually check raising here. Very interested in seeing his hand. Yeah, and he has actually a set of 7s with, well, he actually has pretty good playability, to be honest, with the flush draw on top. I don't think this hand has the necessity to necessarily slow play because the king is out there. There seems to be enough hands that can give action, but maybe because we're blocking the flush draw, it's fine to check. Runs here into top pair and a wrap with the king 6-8-9. Now, is Queen 7-7 double suited or Queen 7-7 10 double suited a 3-bet? I think it could be. It's not going to be in the top 5% the way I saw it, but we'll see. So Queen 7-7 10 double suited, no trip suits. It's going to be in the not top 5%, but it's going to be around 7 to 8%. Somewhere in that neighborhood. Seems to be a fine 3-bet, and then yeah, check raising the flop, making a straight on the first one, and they are chopping it up on the second one. So that was interesting, and I do agree with the idea there to not have a smaller bet sizing like check, raise, or pot. And because when you check, you become quite vulnerable. If you don't protect that range, you also want to have some traps in build, and in this case, he was trapping with a set and a flush draw. The next hand goes in here, which is probably going to be the last hand of this review. I want to make the video too long. And this seems to be a single raise pot, under the gun raise, big blind caller, very shallow. He only bets half pot on the flop. Maybe he is trapping, holding top pair in a wrap against top 3 pair. And I mean, it seems to be standard from both ends. We have here ace, king, queen, 10. Double suited with low suits though, from an under the gun position. I mean, he's blocking aces. Let's see if that is actually enough. I'm not sure if I have shown the right table actually. So this is the situation. Under the gun opens, big blind calls, and then the flop goes check raise. And I want to explore whether or not the under the gun hand here, the ace, king, queen, 10, 3, ace, king, queen, 10, 3 is an open. Well, double suited with no trip suit, it is 5% to 11%. It says here the average rank is 6.93. And if this card here is the offsuit, it's not a suited ace, it's going to be like 8 to 11%. Yeah, I mean, the multi-way playability is not great of this hand, and also facing 3-bets, we're not going to do that well because we are not so well connected. Don't have that nut suit. When we get 3-bet, we will get 3-bet by aces, but these aces will be suited more often than not, given that we have 5 cards. So we're going to run into like ace-x of clubs or ace-x with clubs much more often than in 4 cards. So maybe this hand could be a fold under the gun. Obviously, you can take any card away apart from the ace in 4-card PLO and would always be an open because of the blockers. But it seems like in 5-card PLO, like that 5th card wants to be connected, or we want to have that ace-high suit, especially opening under the gun because nuttiness is so important. And with that being said, we're going to wrap up the very first session, diving a little bit into 5-card PLO. Let me know, guys, if you are interested in 5-card PLO to begin with, what kind of formats you would like to see in the future, in which questions can I answer to you guys that you find are relevant, pre-flop strategy, post-flop strategy, and what kind of settings are you generally in, deeper stacked, shorter stacked, live games, are there a lot of multi-way pots or not as many multi-way pots? We saw today in this very shallow online setting with high stakes and good players that there are a lot of heads-up situations, but I can imagine in a live setting or at lower stakes, there are going to be many more multi-way spots. So it will be interesting for us to also look into some lower stakes footage, jump also into some lower stakes games, and see if we can figure out a solid strategy over there. Until then, any comments, questions below as usual. Jay Nandes over and out for the PLO Mastermind.